Now sit yourself down, 'cause this here's a tale that weaves through time like an old river. The Old Talbott Inn, setting smack dab in Bardstown, Kentucky, has seen more faces and tales than a front porch rocker. Built way back in 1779, she's one of the oldest stagecoach stops this side of the Mississippi. Them stone walls have held up through storms, wars, and more whiskey-soaked stories than the best moonshiners' tales. Welcome, folks, to Kentucky Melody. If you're here, it means you've got a taste for the eerie, the mysterious, and the spine-tingling tales that this beautiful state has to offer. You've landed on our Scary Stories from Kentucky podcast playlist, where we dig deep into the history and legends that make Kentucky a hotbed for the strange and unexplained. Before we jump into today's story, I'd like to invite you to take your experience a step further and join our membership program. By becoming a Backwoods Believer, you'll unlock exclusive perks like early access to videos, behind-the-scenes content, and members-only discussions. It's the best way to support our channel and immerse yourself even more in the chilling tales we share. So, grab a seat and get cozy. Today's story is one that'll make you think twice about the shadows that linger and the stories that never die. Let's dive in. Now, if y'all ever find yourself passing through Bardstown, Kentucky, don't let the charm of them cobblestone streets fool you. This here's the oldest town west of the Alleghenies, steeped in stories as deep as the holler and as dark as a moonless night. But there ain't a story in Bardstown as eerie as the one held within the walls of the Old Talbott Inn. She don't just sit there. She breathes history, watches the folks that come and go, and sometimes she whispers when the night turns cold. Built in 1779, the Talbott Inn was more than just a place to hang your hat. Back in those early days, it was a beacon, a welcome sight for travelers and stagecoach drivers whose bones were rattled to the marrow after miles on rugged trails. It wasn't long for it became the lifeblood of Bardstown. Them stagecoaches rolled in like clockwork, bringing news, letters, and strangers with stories from places most folks round here only dreamt of. The tap room was where the town's heart beat strongest. Farmers, merchants, and weary soldiers rubbed elbows, sharing a pint and stories that grew taller with each round. Musicians would pick up their fiddles, and soon the place would be alive with foot-stomping tunes that made you forget the troubles outside, even if just for a spell. Now, it weren't just any old folk who found their way to the Talbott Inn. Daniel Boone himself, the legendary woodsman with eyes as sharp as the hawks he hunted, sat by the fire and swapped tales. And young Abraham Lincoln, still a boy with big ears and bigger dreams, laid his head under them same rafters that stand today. The inn's guest book was a who's who of history, but no name stands out more than Jesse James. Jesse James, the outlaw whose name still echoes through these hills, found refuge in the Talbott Inn one stormy night. Eyes darting with the watchfulness of a hunted man, Jesse sat in the corner, sipping whiskey that burned like fire and watching shadows dance on the walls. They say the outlaw grew so spooked by what he saw, shapes moving when they shouldn't, that he up and fired his pistol right into the wall. Them bullet holes are still there, marked deep like a warning that even death don't scare away what lingers here. But the inn stories ain't all whiskey and tall tales. There's a chapter marked by flame and fear, a night that left scars on the stone and echoes in the air. It was the late 1800s, and a fire broke out, starting in the kitchen where a careless spark caught hold. The blaze spread fast, faster than a whip crack, licking up the old timbers and roaring down the halls. Men hollered, women screamed, and buckets of water did little more than sizzle in the face of them flames. By the time the sun peeked over the hills, the Talbot Inn stood blackened and hollow-eyed. But she weren't down for the count. The folks of Bardstown were made of tougher stuff. They rebuilt her plank by plank, stone by stone, as if to spit in the face of whatever had tried to burn her down. And from them ashes she rose again, holding stories even deeper in her bones. Now if you sit down with a local over a glass of bourbon and start whispering about the Old Talbot Inn, don't be surprised if they lean in close and tell you it's more than just the creaking of old wood in the draft that makes you shiver. No, sir. There's a reason folks say that the past breathes in that place, and the air feels thick with eyes watching from somewhere just out of sight. Room 3 is where the bravest come to test their mettle, and many leave with their nerves rattled. It's said that if you lay your head down in that room and close your eyes, you best be prepared for what might come next. More than a handful of guests have reported waking up in the deep hours of the night, the room colder than it should be, the hair on their arms standing on end like they're being watched. And they ain't wrong. Them that have dared open their eyes claim they see a shadow setting at the foot of the bed. He's a man, dressed in an old coat, his form dark and solid, but his face, well, that's the part that gets folks talking in hushed tones. It's half hidden, shadowed just enough that you can't quite see the eyes, but you know he's looking straight at you, as if he's searching for something. Some say it's Jesse James himself, resting in the only place he ever found a moment's peace, his spirit guarding what he couldn't in life. But others reckon it's something older, tied to the stone and the stories carved into the inn's bones. And then there's the lady in white. If room 3 makes the hair on your neck prickle, then catching sight of her'll send a shiver down your spine that don't leave for days. She's been seen drifting down the grand staircase, her dress flowing like mist, feet never touching a step. Her face is pale, eyes wide with a sorrow so deep you could drown in it. Folks say she don't make a sound, just floats, disappearing as soon as you blink or look too close. Some say she's searching for a lost love, a promise unkept, or maybe even a child she couldn't save. There are whispers that she's the ghost of a guest who met a tragic end, a heartbroken soul forever wandering the halls where she once walked in life. And when she passes, the air smells faintly of lilacs, as if she's left a part of herself behind. Now there's a different kind of haunting that takes place when the lights are low and the moon's hid behind clouds. Folk who've sat in the dining room after hours, cleaning up or just taking a moment to themselves, have heard the giggles of children. But there ain't been young'uns playing in the inn for generations. The laughter bounces off the walls, quick and bright, and then fades as fast as it comes, leaving only silence that feels heavier than before. In some rooms, guests say they felt the weight of little hands tugging at their quilts, as if a child was trying to climb into bed. But when they flick on the lamp, there's nothing there but the goosebumps on their arms and the stillness that follows, watching and waiting. On certain nights, when the town's quiet and the stars are bright, the inn lights up with something unnatural. Small orbs of light, cold and blue as ice, float through the air, dancing and bobbing like fireflies. Folks have tried to snap pictures or catch 'em on film, but those lights move quick and disappear faster than a breath on a cold morning. They say those lights come when the spirits are stirring, drawn up by old stories and the energy of a place that remembers. Back in the day, that fire nearly took the old inn down to cinders, but some say that fire left more behind than just blackened stone. There are times, especially in the dead heat of summer, when there ain't no reason for it, that guests have smelled smoke rolling through the hallways. It's sharp and sudden, the kind that gets in the back of your throat and makes you cough. and just as quick as it comes, it's gone, leaving only the memory of flames that once roared and the echoes of panic that still whisper if you listen close enough. When the sun dips below the horizon and the shadows start their dance, the Old Talbott Inn comes alive in a way that ain't got nothing to do with the living. Disembodied footsteps clomp down the halls when the place should be quiet as a graveyard. The sound of furniture dragging across the floor has woken more than a few guests, and when they rush to see what's causing the racket, they find everything just as they left it, except for the cold that nips at their skin. There's talk of voices, too, low, murmuring ones that seem to come from empty rooms. Some guests have leaned in to listen, swearing they heard their own names whispered back. The old-timers say it's just the inn's way of letting folks know it remembers, that it's always watching and won't ever forget the stories it holds. The most frightening stories come from those who've dared to work there late at night. Miss Alma, the housekeeper from way back, told the tale of her last night on the job. She was sweeping up the tap room when the air turned cold as a midwinter wind, and the light from her lamp dimmed like the flame was being smothered. She swore she heard a man's voice, low and raspy, whisper from the dark, "Get out while you can." When she spun round, there weren't nobody there, just the echo of her own quick breath and the feeling that eyes were watching from the deep corners. Miss Alma quit the very next day, leaving the tale to spread through the town like wildfire. Today, the Old Talbott Inn stands with its head held high, wearing its history like a coat of armor. The guests come for the bourbon, the charm, and the stories, but many leave with a tale that'll keep 'em awake at night. Some whisper about the cold hand that brushed past 'em when they walked alone down the hall, or the knocking at their door when there wasn't no soul on the other side. The inn, with its creaking floors and shadowed corners, don't just tell stories. It shares 'em, and it listens for new ones. So if you ever come to Bardstown and find yourself standing at the door of the Old Talbott Inn, remember that history ain't always resting in books and stories. Sometimes it's walking the halls, watching from the dark, and waiting for the next soul brave enough to stay a while. So what do y'all think about the tales of the Old Talbott Inn? Have any of you ever stayed there or had your own ghostly encounter in Bardstown? We'd love to hear your stories, so be sure to drop a comment and share your experience. And if this has sparked your curiosity enough to book a room and see for yourself, we'll leave a link in the description so you can plan your own hauntin' visit. Just remember, when you're there, keep one eye open. You never know who or what might be watching. Thank y'all for watching and joining me on this eerie walk through the halls of the Old Talbott Inn. If you liked what you heard and want more tales that'll send a shiver down your spine, be sure to like, subscribe, and follow the Kentucky Melody channel for more. Don't forget to check out our Scary Stories from Kentucky podcast playlist, where we dive deeper into haunting tales from across the Bluegrass State. And if you're brave enough, join our members area and become one of our Backwoods Believers, where we share exclusive stories, behind-the-scenes content, and special treats for those who just can't get enough of Kentucky's ghostly lore. Now remember, the next time you hear a knock in the dead of night and you ain't expecting company, maybe just double-check that it's not one of our ghostly friends coming to say hello. Y'all sleep tight tonight.